For centuries in Slavic countries, the name Mora has sent shivers down people's spines. She is the weaver of nightmares, an evil spirit that haunts the night, bringing terrifying dreams to life. This essay will explore the myth of Mora, her connection to sleep paralysis, and her lasting presence in our collective imagination. We will delve into historical accounts, cultural variations, and modern scientific interpretations of this ancient folklore. Imagine waking up from a dream, your heart pounding, unable to move. This terrifying experience, known as sleep paralysis, is often attributed to Mora. She is said to sit on chests, suffocating her victims, leaving them helpless to their worst fears. Mora's origin is shrouded in mystery. Some believe she is the spirit of a wronged woman, seeking revenge from beyond the grave. Others see her as a manifestation of our deepest fears, taking shape in the vulnerable realm of sleep. Regardless of her origin, the legend of Mora serves as a reminder of the power of folklore and humanity's enduring fascination with the unknown. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of Mora, the nighttime demon that haunts your dreams. Story 1. The Shadow on the Ceiling. Maria had been experiencing sleep paralysis for months. Every night she would wake up unable to move, her body pinned to the bed as if weights were placed on her chest. But the worst part wasn't the paralysis, it was the shadow. It always started on the ceiling. At first it was just a dark blob, something she dismissed as her mind playing tricks. But each night the shadow became more defined. It stretched its limbs across the room, inching closer and closer. She could feel its eyes on her, though she never dared to look directly at it. One night, she tried to fight back. She struggled with all her might to move, but the more she tried, the more the shadow seemed to relish the scene. And then, for the first time, she felt its cold hand on her neck. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The pressure grew until everything went black. The next morning, she woke up with bruises in the shape of fingers on her body. Story 2. The Weight on the Chest. Jake was a man of logic. He didn't believe in ghosts, demons, or the supernatural, so when he started experiencing sleep paralysis, he attributed it to stress. His body would be paralyzed and his heart would race, but he always managed to snap out of it. That is, until it didn't stop. He woke up unable to move and heard a low, raspy breathing coming from the corner of his room. His eyes darted to the source of the sound, and that's when he saw it. A dark figure, cloaked in tattered black robes. It was slowly crawling towards him, creeping onto his bed. Jake's heart pounded as the figure settled on his chest, its weight crushing the air out of his lungs. He could feel its icy breath on his face, but he couldn't move, couldn't scream. Its face was hidden in the shadows, but he could feel its gaze, relishing his terror. Just as the figure leaned in, mere inches from his face, Jake jolted awake, gasping for air. He laughed, relieved that it was just another episode of sleep paralysis. That is, until he felt the weight still pressing on his chest, even though he was awake. Story 3. The Figure in the Mirror. Hannah was a light sleeper, easily startled awake by the slightest sound. One night, she woke up to a soft, rhythmic tapping. The room was dark, but she could make out the shape of her dresser across from her bed, and on it the mirror. The tapping continued. She sat up, trying to shake off the sleep, and that's when she saw it. Something in the mirror that wasn't in the room. A faint figure, standing directly behind her. Hannah froze, her breath catching in her throat. The figure was tall and gaunt, with long, bony fingers tapping on the surface of the mirror from the inside. It had no eyes, just empty sockets staring back at her through the reflection. She wanted to turn around to see if it was really behind her, but she couldn't move. The figure leaned forward, its head tilting curiously, and then it smiled, a wide, grotesque grin that stretched far too long on its face. The tapping stopped. Story 4. The Whisperer. Late one night, as Ellie was about to fall asleep, she heard it. Soft, raspy whispers coming from the foot of her bed. The room was pitch black, the whispers continuing, growing louder and more insistent. At first she thought it was the wind, maybe the rustling of leaves outside her window. But then the whispers formed into words. "Ellie, Ellie, come closer. Her heart pounded as she pulled the covers over her head, too afraid to move. The voice didn't stop. It continued to call her name, its tone growing more impatient. "Ellie, look at me!" Trembling, she peeked over the foot of the bed, and there, barely visible in the darkness, was the shadow of a figure. It was crouched low, almost childlike, with eyes that glinted in the dim light. It swayed back and forth, the whispers now frantic. "Ellie, I'm waiting." Frozen with fear, Ellie squeezed her eyes shut, praying it was a dream. But when she opened them again, the figure was no longer at the foot of the bed. It was beside her. Story 5. The Silent Roommate. Lily lived in an old apartment that creaked and groaned at night, but she had gotten used to it. She liked her quiet life and her equally quiet roommate, Claire, who always kept to herself. One night, Lily woke up feeling strange. She wasn't sure why, but something felt wrong. She sat up, taking in the apartment. It was utterly silent. No street noise, no creaking, no rustling. Then she noticed Claire standing in the hallway just outside her room, staring at the wall. "Claire?" Lily whispered, but Claire didn't respond. She just stood there, her back to Lily, completely still. A shiver ran down Lily's spine. Something wasn't right. She got out of bed and slowly approached her roommate. "Claire?" she said again, reaching out to touch her shoulder. But as soon as her fingers brushed against Claire, her head snapped around, her eyes wide and vacant. "I'm not Claire," the figure whispered. Lily jumped back, her heart pounding. She fumbled for the light switch, but when she flicked it on, Claire was gone. There was no one in the hallway, no sign of her roommate. The next morning, Lily asked Claire about it, but she just looked at her, confused. "I wasn't even home last night," Claire said. Story 6. The Face at the Window. One rainy night, Dan was home alone, sitting in his living room reading, when he noticed something in the corner of his eye. It was just a glimpse, a flicker of movement outside his window. He turned his head, expecting to see branches swaying in the wind, but instead he saw a face. It was pressed up against the glass, pale and skeletal, with eyes wide open, staring straight at him. Dan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The face didn't move. It just stared at him, unblinking, as the rain poured down outside. He got up, slowly approaching the window, but as he got closer, the face vanished. He quickly went outside, thinking someone was playing a prank on him, but there was no one there. No footprints, no sign that anyone had been near the window. Shaken, Dan went back inside, locking all the doors and drawing the curtains. He tried to convince himself it was just his imagination. But as he lay in bed that night, he heard a soft tapping on the window again. This time he didn't dare to look. Mora's appearances vary widely in folklore, but some themes persist. She is often described as a beautiful woman with long flowing hair, which she uses to entangle her victims. However, her beauty is deceiving, a mask for her true nature. She can also appear as a shadowy figure, a grotesque old woman, or even a small creature that can slip through keyholes. Victims of Mora often describe a feeling of dread and a heavy weight on their chest, making it difficult to breathe. They may experience vivid hallucinations, seeing and feeling Mora's presence in their room. The dreams she weaves are not mere nightmares. They feel incredibly real, leaving the dreamer disturbed and terrified long after waking up. These encounters often leave behind physical evidence such as tangled hair, scratches on the body, or a feeling of exhaustion. These tangible reminders blur the lines between dream and reality, making Mora's presence even more terrifying. Mora's ability to cross the boundaries between the dream world and the waking world is what makes her so frightening. She embodies the primal fear of the unknown, lurking in the shadows of our subconscious, waiting to strike when we are most vulnerable. Sleep paralysis, a condition where a person is aware of their surroundings but unable to move or speak, is often linked to Mora. This terrifying experience often occurs during the transition between sleep and wakefulness, when the mind is in a liminal state. During sleep paralysis, individuals may experience hallucinations and a feeling of pressure on their chest, often accompanied by a sense of dread. These symptoms align perfectly with descriptions of Mora's attacks, leading many to believe that she is responsible. The scientific explanation for sleep paralysis does not diminish the terror associated with it. While it is a natural phenomenon often triggered by stress, sleep deprivation, or irregular sleep patterns, the experience itself is incredibly unsettling. For those who believe in Mora, sleep paralysis is not just a medical condition, but a tangible sign of the supernatural. The fear that Mora embodies transcends cultural boundaries, tapping into a universal fear of the unknown and the feeling of helplessness. While Mora is deeply rooted in Slavic folklore, similar entities exist in cultures worldwide. This suggests that the fear she embodies, the fear of the unknown, and the terror of sleep paralysis is universal, manifesting in different forms across cultures. In Scandinavian folklore, the mare is a supernatural creature that rides on people's chests while they sleep, causing nightmares. Similarly, in Newfoundland, the old hag is blamed for sleep paralysis and night terrors, mirroring the suffocating presence of Mora. In Japan, Kanashibari describes a similar experience of sleep paralysis, often attributed to spirits or demons.